Friday, April 17th, 2025. Before we dive on into this, I have one request. If you end up liking this content at any point throughout this video, hit the subscribe button. But anyway, let's go ahead and get to it. But Bitcoin is the Ponzi scheme from Carl B. Menger. Again, long-term. I just have a long-term perspective with Bitcoin. I am a diamond hander of Bitcoin and no other cryptocurrency. And just why am I so much of a believer in Bitcoin? It's more so because I am not a believer in the US dollar. The US dollar is a scam. If you could zoom in, if I could get myself out of the way, what you would see with that arrow there is when the dollar depegged from gold, and look at it now, you know. And are we going to measure what's the Ponzi scheme? Guys, what's the Ponzi scheme? Since this fiat currency scam was created, not just in the United States, but all around the world, the Ponzi scheme is the fiat currency, and Bitcoin is only illustrating that. And so number go up. What is the final number of Bitcoin measured in dollars? It's Bitcoin infinity. It's also bread infinity because the US dollar will eventually go to zero. Maybe not in other lifetimes, but eventually. So some initial perspective. However, I also want to share with you just more of a support to my perspective that I do believe that whatever we have coming up, it's going to be at best similar to post-May of 2021. Okay, what do I mean by that? This chart here is the Heikenashized oscillator. So Heikenhashi candles, that's why I'm kind of struggling with naming it. But Heikenashized oscillators high candle. It's kind of like MACD, but a little bit of a different signal. And you can see in 2021, this is the 2021 comparison here. This thing peaked in April and going into May of 2021, and then it started a descent. And so what happened after May of 2021 is, Bitcoin peaked at $64,900 the day of the Coinbase IPO on April 14th of 2021. It dumped really hard in May, got down to 29,000, and then ranged between 29 and 40,000 for the remainder of the next 3 months or so, and then started climbing. It bottomed out in July of 2021, started climbing, and then put in a new all-time high for Bitcoin and for the total altcoin market cap, and then that was it. And so I do believe that this is the best case scenario for us moving forward. I really do hope that we would see a new all-time high in Bitcoin. But according to this indicator, again, that would be best case scenario. There's lots of indicators that I could show you, monthly MACD, monthly stochastic, that would communicate something along the lines of, again, a best case scenario is a new all-time high a little bit beyond the previous all-time high of $108,000, $109,000. And so, not financial advice. Personally, I'm not going to be getting too greedy if and when we see Bitcoin above that point. Could we see it go to the teens, 1-teens? Could we see it go to the 120s? We could, sure. But I am not going to be too greedy. I'm going to be looking for plenty of signs signs of weakness in terms of when I'll be looking to exit if we get to that point. But anyway, moving on, a couple other things. I just really appreciated this post from Income Sharks here. I thought I was following him, but now I do. I just want to, if you didn't see this post, check it out. But I want to just highlight some things here. Until crypto goes back to innovating and providing real value, I feel like I'm wasting my time trying to convince others to see how greedy and delusional this space has become. Money is being extracted at an accelerated rate from loyal crypto believers to outsiders who could care less. It started with VCs and exchanges, ETFs, and the celebs and influencers, and now it's down to people taking from each other. Pump fun. Everyone wants to blame pump.fun, and it deserves some blame, but not as much as people make it out to be. But large centralized exchanges became the gatekeepers, listing whatever tokens made them the most money. So looking at you, Binance, I showed a chart from Binance the other day, and it seems like they're just trying to get as much of a money grab as possible with these cryptos that they're listing that are all junk coins. A pay-to-play model that punished good projects and rewarded slimy ones. Rugs have become acceptable. CTOs an excuse for a dev to rug twice, blah, blah, blah. Delusion. Here's kind of a perspective that I have that I think is going to play itself out over the next 12 months or so. Delusion is now required to feel normalcy. And if you dare speak out against any of this, you become the villain. The solution, wait patiently for things to break so that the space is ready to go back to the way it was. Quality over quantity, etc. Here's the entire thesis of all of these. Of this entire point, this entire post. We need crypto 2.0. So what's he saying here when he says we need crypto 2.0? He's referring back to the dot-com crash. We had the roaring 90s with the dot-com bubble. Anything with dot-com that went public was instantly valued at $1 billion. It was insane, $1 billion in 90s terms. And we're in a similar point with an inflection point, perhaps, with crypto, where we are certainly in the crypto 1.0 era. They called that the dot-com 1.0 era. And we are, I would say, late stage crypto 1.0. And what comes after this is probably a removal of a lot of excess, and then something incredibly beautiful, which is crypto 2.0. That's going to take some time to play itself out. I'm not talking about tomorrow. I'm not even talking about within next year. I'm talking about at some point, the end of crypto 1.0 is going to usher in something fantastic, but the end of crypto 1.0 is probably going to be pretty rough. So just something to keep in mind. I really did appreciate that post from Income Sharks here. Now, this is something that I'm really fascinated by, and I would love it. Could we please see something like this? So just in from Bitcoin Magazine, just in $110 billion Van Eck proposes Bitbonds for the U.S. to buy more Bitcoin and refinance its $14 trillion debt. So in 2025, there is a significant need for the United States to refinance its debt. And Van Eck has a proposal that, man, I've never once considered buying treasuries. Never, whatever percentage return, it's like, no, I still feel like my dollars would be melting if I bought treasuries. But here we go. The U.S. government needs to refinance large $14 trillion accounts of debt over the next 3 years. Interest rates are relatively high versus history. They must maintain continued investor demand for bonds. Desired novel reserve assets. The bond investor needs protection from dollar inflation. Exactly why I have no interest in buying treasuries. Demands protection from asset inflation. Seeks upside beyond risk-free rate. And here's the solution, according to Van Eck, Bitbonds. So I know I'm blocking it, so let me just read this. The U.S. government offers here's the strategy with it. Government offers a 90% bond plus 10% Bitcoin, purchased with the proceeds of the sale. The sale value equals $100 plus, and redemption equals $90 plus the Bitcoin value. So whatever the value of Bitcoin is. The investor receives all Bitcoin gains up until a maximum annualized YTM of 4.5% purchased on the value of the bond. If Bitcoin gains exceed enough to provide 4.5% YTM to the investor, the government and the Bitbond investor split the remaining gains 50-50. So, this is a way to play it a little bit safe for larger investors, for people who don't really want to be all in, want to be YOLOing into Bitcoin, and it's a way to play it safe for people who want an option that would involve their dollars not melting away in the bank, but provides a little bit more risk, but probably a lot more reward. This would be really interesting. I would love to see something like this happen, but we'll just have to stay tuned. All right, so that is mostly it for the Bitcoin content. I did not mean to be showing that, but okay. Little plug, join the channel as a member. Member-only live streams every Tuesday and Thursday. Early access to any crypto that I'm going to make content about. Full access to the trading journal spreadsheet and regular updates. So we do have member live streams every Tuesday and Thursday. And also, if you are looking to trade Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, here are my recommendations. BingX and BitUnix. You need a VPN if you're in the United States or UK. For BingX, you do not need a VPN at all. For BitUnix, they are both non-KYC exchanges. These are places where I do a large majority of my trading of cryptocurrencies. So check that out. Links in the description of this video. But let's move on. U.S. airports are welcoming fewer international tourists. Some 4.5 million visitors arrived last month, down 9.7% from March of 2024. And you can see this arrivals from Canada, from Mexico, from Europe, from Asia, from South America, from the Middle East. It is all down. This is a textbook sign of a recession. I have been saying since 2022, within a year, within 12 months of the first rate cuts, we would most likely see a recession no matter who's president, no matter what's going on, no matter tariffs or whatever, blah, blah, blah. This was going to happen. All right. And there was, if Kamala won, this would still be happening. Would it be as accelerated as it is right now? Sure, you can make an argument that it wouldn't, but we would get to the same point eventually. With Kamala, it would have just taken longer. Okay. So just keep that in mind, that the Atlanta Fed has projected negative GDP for the first quarter. We'll see those numbers soon. Second quarter, I would also assume, is negative GDP. 2 quarters, by definition, is a recession, despite the fact that they decided, whoever they are, they decided that that in 2022 we did not have a recession. Okay, congrats, Joe Biden. U.S. bank receipts are skyrocketing. U.S. weekly bankruptcy filings 4-week average jumped to 7, the most since the 2020 crisis. Outside of 2020, this is the highest level since the financial crisis. Companies with more than $50 million in liabilities. This is something to pay attention to, and this is really fascinating to me in some regards, because I listened to Jerome Powell speak on Wednesday, and his communication was the economy is strong, and I can see why he would say that. Unemployment isn't exploding or anything like that. It went up to 4.2%, the last report, and inflation is coming down. But it seems to me like there's lots of other data that would support this idea that we are heading in a direction that Jerome Powell does not want us to head. And so at some point, we're going to have to deal with the threat of inflation, with the tariffs, which would just be a short-term spike, and the threat of a weakening economy. And it seems like a lot of, just received news yesterday that the central bank in Europe did another 25 basis point cut, their 7th month in a row, and the Federal Reserve is just sitting on their hands. So we're going to have to see how this plays itself out. But moving on to precious metals. I've always been a fan of precious metals, even though this is a crypto channel. Gold adjusted for money supply. Again, a second post from Octavio Tabi Costa, the most amazing last name in all of existence. This is what I believe to be one of the most important breakouts in history. Here's a reminder. When adjusted for money supply, gold prices remain 75% below their peak levels reached in 1980. And is this a breakout? You need 3 points to make a trend line. Here we are. Is this a breakout? I would say most likely yes, that, gold, this is, just keep in mind, this is a 50-year chart here, so this will move a lot slower, but I do believe over the next 10 years, we will be flirting potentially with that 1980 peak, but maybe even, I would assume not nearly that high. I am calling for a $10,000 an ounce gold price at some point in the next 10 years. So interesting chart here. Moving on, silver. If you don't know, silver was my baptism into making all the rookie mistakes that you could ever make. In 2011, I was crazy about silver. Silver went up to $50 an ounce, and I bought the peak, and it still has not broken through there. I think that might happen soon, but this is a big thing that got me really excited about silver in 2011 was industrial demand. There's a lot of industrial demand for silver, and the amount of silver in circulation decreases because of industrial demand. That's not as much the case for gold. So it's just something to keep in mind here. 56% increase over the last 10 years. If and when silver breaks its $50 all-time high, that was a double top from 1980 and 2011. I think within the next 5 years or so, that's going to happen. It's probably sooner than that. Then this is only going to make silver more scarce. And so that's going to be a violent breakout. But I'm very hopeful about silver over just as much with gold. But here's the thing you need to keep in mind with silver is that silver tends to perform very well after a recession, after a crash. That's what happened in 2008, we had the crash, and then silver just went wild. I remember in 2000 getting an ounce of silver, and it was $6 at that time, got up to $50 in 2011. So just something to keep on your radar. But anyway, moving on, a post that might interest only me. Poor guy. I don't know. But every year when paying taxes, I get to check in on my Bitcoin wallet from 2015 that I no longer have access to. And his holdings, his 1,913 Bitcoin, are worth 162 million and just a little bit of change. Wow. Okay. Remember to always, always keep your keys safe. Keep them in a place where you will remember where they were, so that you do not turn out like Griffin McShane, which, let's be honest, if you had 1,000, 100, 1,000, 2,000 Bitcoin in 2015, right now he probably would have much less than that, and he would have sold it for a used car or something like that. But anyway, let's see where the price of Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is slowly becoming one of my favorite stable coins, or quickly becoming one of my favorite stable coins. If you remember this guy, Josh Mandel, in November, he predicted that Bitcoin would be at $84,000 on March 14th of 2025. And then at the moment of the close, it was exactly $84,000. And here we are a little bit more than a month later, and Bitcoin's at $84,000. But I don't know. I'm seeing some strength here. I do believe, again, that last week was a bottom. And then we'll see where we go from here. Hopefully new all-time highs. I'm not expecting anything all that much beyond a new all-time high, like I said earlier in this video, but we'll see. Altcoins still have a long way to go. I would love to at least see some kind of evidence of a higher high forming in the altcoin market cap before getting too excited. So I tend to think that we're going to be moving on our way to a higher low from where we were last week at this time, but then that we would bounce from there. We'll see. So things are looking decent right now. Let's keep things moving in the right direction. But anyway, that's all I have for today. I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful Easter weekend, and I will most certainly be seeing you in another video. Peace.